You're 90 minutes into a long ride and you're starting to experience the dreaded bonk. This is when we run out of muscle glycogen. We don't have enough sugar in our systems to keep going. And when you're riding a bike, those carbohydrate reserves, the amount of carbohydrate you have in your system is the fuel that you need. My name's Jasper Blake. I've been a coach for over 15 years now. I was a professional athlete for 20 years prior to that. Excited to be here to share my experience and knowledge with you at Dynamic Cyclist. Why do you need to fuel when you're on a bike ride or doing a long bike event? Well, we have enough carbohydrate reserves and kind of enough hydration in our system to last about 60 to 90 minutes. But the reality is the fuel that we burn when we're cycling, especially as the intensity goes up, is carbohydrate. So if we don't replace that carbohydrate, that sugar that we need, eventually we bonk. Bonking is a really rough feeling. If you've been doing biking for any length of time and you've run out of food, or maybe you were kind of forgetting to eat or drink along the way, you've probably experienced this. So the important thing is we replace what we're losing. The longer the bike event is, or the longer your training ride is, the more important it is to stay on top of that nutrition intake as you go. It should be small amounts regularly. You don't want to sort of overwhelm your system all at once. You don't want to drink a whole bottle of sports drink all at once, kind of on the hour. You want to break it up into small, manageable pieces, 10 minutes at a time, 15 minutes at a time, so that everything stays nice and level. Your blood sugar stays level, your hydration stays level, your electrolyte balance stays level. Really, really important to get on top of and learn the best way for you to fuel on those long bike events. How do you know what to eat and drink on those long bike rides? I encourage my athletes to take it really, really simply. So you need carbohydrate, you need water, and you need electrolyte, or mainly sodium, to be honest. A good sports drink is going to cover all three of those. So the base of a good sports drink is generally water mixed with carbohydrate, some kind of sugar, and sodium, or usually a mix of electrolytes. So keep it really, really simple. Carbohydrate, sodium, and water. And from there, the sky's the limit. You have to kind of experiment with some products, see which ones are the best for you. There's a lot of products available now. If you go to a good bike store or a good running shoe store, they'll usually have some of the higher end products. Even your grocery store will have some sport drink products. You have to be a little careful. One of the things that's important with especially sports drink is something called osmolality, which is the concentration of those sugars in the liquid. And generally the cheaper sports drinks are a little bit higher in osmolality, which makes it tougher to absorb. So usually a little higher end product from a good specialty store is going to pay more attention to that particular part of the equation. In simplest form, you need carbohydrate, water, and you need sodium. How much of that sort of like processed, sort of sports specific nutrition should I have versus real food? And my answer is, well, it depends what your tolerance level for it is. So some people can tolerate the sports drink and the gel and the bar, for hours and hours and hours. Some people need a little bit of real food injected into there. I was a balance of the two. So I was okay with sports drink and gels, and I had my favorites, the ones that I really liked. But I found on longer training rides, I often needed to bring some real food as well. I found bananas really, really useful. I love them. They agreed with my stomach. There's a good amount of carbohydrate in there. They're easy for me to digest, but not everybody. I know some people who don't really like bananas. It really comes down to what your personal preferences are and practicing it in training, trying different products, finding the ones that you like, and then setting a consistent rhythm with it. Again, the bottom line though is we need carbohydrate, we need water, and we need sodium. So as long as you're getting those three elements from somewhere, that's good. And I would encourage you to stick to products or food that really focus on those. So try not to get bogged down with foods that sort of combine a lot of fat or a lot of protein. That's harder to digest in the moment. It's harder to digest when your intensity is a bit higher, like it is when you're biking. Focus on foods that are a little bit more specific to those things. So maybe a bagel, for example, that's pretty much all carbohydrate. And it's more in the real food category, and will give you a little bit of a break from those often high sugary, very sweet sports related products that we use. One of the most interesting examples of someone trying to include real food, and this was a really good friend of mine in an Ironman. By the way, this didn't actually work out very well for him, but I love the story. He decided that a good thing for him to have on the bike course would be mashed potatoes with gravy, because it had lots of carbohydrate and lots of salt. So pre-race, he made huge amounts of mashed potatoes. And he thought, well, how am I going to carry this on the bike? How am I going to deliver this into my mouth? And so he filled up a bunch of those things that you would decorate a cake with, full of mashed potatoes and gravy. And he shoved those in his back pocket on bike. Now, this is late 90s, mind you. So things back then were a little rougher. We didn't have as many products available in the sport nutrition category, and he thought it was just going to work wonders. Anyway, you can guess what happened. About 2 hours into the bike, it's really, really hot. It was in a hot climate, and this mashed potato and gravy concoction in these cake sort of dispenser things were sort of oozing out of his pockets, and of course it made him feel very ill. But the intent was right. He wanted carbohydrate, he needed sodium. I think he was just having water on his bike, so he was getting that component. But mashed potatoes and gravy turned out to be not such a good idea. And then I think in the future he reverted to other nutritional intake ideas.
Join thousands of cyclists and gain access to hundreds of guided routines for strength training, mobility, and injury prevention. Click the link in the description for a 7-day free trial. Now, back to the video.
How much of the water, carbohydrate, and sodium should you take in on a long ride? We do have enough of that in reserve in our bodies to last about 60 or 90 minutes. Now, of course, as intensity goes up, our demand for carbohydrate goes up, so we have to be a little bit mindful of our intensity. But if you're only going out for an hour or even 90 minutes, technically you don't need much. If anything at all. I still encourage my athletes, though, to eat and drink even on those shorter rides, because it's going to help you recover for that next workout. If you're doing a training program that has daily workouts or maybe even a couple workouts in that day, even if your workout is short, you don't want to get into a deficit. So you should always be mindful of your nutrition. Now, I'm going to give you some simple little ranges to work with. I really want to emphasize that everybody is different. Not everybody can tolerate the same amount of nutrition. So you have to figure out what works for you, and you have to figure out which products work for you or which real food works for you. But here's some simple ranges to go by. The first is your water intake. And again, this usually comes through a sports drink. In fact, I encourage it because it's an easy way in liquid form to get that into your body. But you generally need about 500 milliliters to 1 liter of fluid per hour. Now it depends on the conditions as well. If it's cold and you're not sweating as much, maybe you need a bit less. If it's really hot conditions, like you're in a very hot, humid climate, you might need a little bit more. And certainly that's a big range. You might even need to go a little bit more than a liter per hour if the conditions are hot, but you have to train your gut to get there because that's a lot to put in. But in that 500 milliliter to 1,000 milliliters or 1 liter per hour, that's a good place to start. The second is your carbohydrate intake. Now, I always recommend that people try and get between 60 and 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour. You'll see these days, sometimes you'll see in the top level in cycling or triathlon, some of those athletes are reaching for about 100 grams an hour. Certainly when you get up there, it becomes tougher and tougher to digest and absorb that amount. But some of the new products are actually designed to be absorbed a little more readily in the gut, so it's making that a little bit easier. But usually between 60 and 90 grams an hour is a good place to start. Intensity is important though, because as intensity goes up, our demand for that carbohydrate also goes up. But as you guessed, as intensity goes up, usually the event is a little bit shorter. But generally that 60 to 90 grams an hour is a nice place to start. Start at 60 if you have no gut issues and you can inch it up a little bit, that's great. Don't start at the high end because usually that can wreak a bit of havoc on your gut. And then what about sodium, our third key component? Anywhere between 500 and 1,000 milligrams per hour is what we're aiming for. Again, on longer events, sometimes athletes will stretch that a little bit beyond 1,000. It's quite difficult to overdo sodium, but over the long haul, events lasting 3, 4 or more hours, it's easy to underdo it. It's really important that you have that component in there. So simple ranges to work with there. Start at the low end and see if you can inch your way up and train. Practice it and you'll get better at taking on that nutrition. The timing of your nutrition intake is really important, and this is a big mistake that athletes, particularly beginners, will often make, is they know the ranges, they know roughly what they need to take in per hour, and they'll try and take it too much at once. The goal is to make sure that everything stays as level as possible. So you want to take small amounts frequently. So if you know at the end of an hour, you need to have 60 to 90 grams of carbs taken in. At the end of an hour, you want to be 500 to 1,000 milliliters of fluid and 500 to 1,000 milligrams of sodium. Don't take that all at once on the hour. Break it up. So maybe every 5 or 10 minutes you're having a sip from your water bottle. Maybe every 15 to 20 minutes you're taking on a little bit more carbohydrate, either through a gel or a bar or a banana or a bagel. Small amounts frequently. The gut likes that a lot better. And it keeps all of those carbohydrate levels, hydration levels, sodium levels nice and even throughout the event. And if you can get into that rhythm, if you practice it in training, it'll become a habit. It's also a nice way to break the race up mentally. I used to do that in Ironman races that last about 8 hours. I'd be sipping every 5 minutes, eating every 15, and it really broke that race up nicely. It gave me something to look forward to. Small amounts frequently, meet your targets at the end of each hour, and you'll be good.
Subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with more mobility and strength tips to keep you pain-free.